This is Newsroom on SABC News. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Eben Jansen. The show, of course, is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are repeated at 2 o'clock every afternoon with a rebroadcast then at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. every day with the entire show that you can then watch on our YouTube channel. Today, the Nkandla report continues to be in the news here in South Africa. We also get an update from Kenya after police arrested more than 600 terrorist suspects earlier this week. And we look at motivating South Africa's next generation of powerful women a little bit later. But first, here are the news headlines. South Africans may have to wait until June for President Jacob Zuma's full response to the Public Protector's report on security upgrades to his Nkandla home. President Zuma met a 14-day deadline to respond to Parliament yesterday, but said he would only respond in full after receiving a report from the Special Investigating Unit. Opposition parties were quick to accuse him of delaying tactics ahead of the election on the 7th of next month. The Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union will continue its campaign for higher wages by marching to Lonmin offices at Melrose Arch in Johannesburg today. AMCA says it will expand its marches to Parliament after the Easter holidays if its demands are not met. More than 80,000 of its members at Lonmin, Anglo-American Platinum and Impala Platinum downed tools in January, demanding a minimum wage of 12,500 rand a month. The union rejected a wage increase offer of 9%. There has been another shooting at the U.S. Army base in Fort Hood, Texas. The gunman killed 3 people and wounded 16 before taking his own life. U.S. Army officials say the shooter had mental issues and was receiving treatment. In 2009, an Army psychiatrist shot dead 13 people at Fort Hood. U.S. President Barack Obama says he's heartbroken that another shooting has occurred at the base. Now, the storm around the release of the Nkandla report on the security upgrades have not settled. The Institute for Accountability here in South Africa has filed an objection against President Jacob Zuma's nomination in the May 7 election. The Institute has submitted their objection letter to the African National Congress and another open letter to the IEC. The Institute includes argument based on the Nkandla report. Also contained in the letter is mention of review proceedings which the Democratic Alliance has pending against a decision to withdraw 783 charges of corruption, fraud, money laundering and racketeering against President Zuma. Meanwhile, a group of KwaZulu-Natal legal practitioners are taking the Nkandla report up for review in the High Court to try and have it set aside. The group claims that the report is irrational, riddled with too many errors and contradiction. The director of the Institute for Accountability in South Africa, Advocate Paul Hoffman, joins us from Cape Town this morning. Good morning, Advocate Hoffman. You with us?
Good morning, Eben, and good morning to your viewers as well. I'm with you, I hope.
Thank you for joining us. Just let's start at the beginning. Why is the Institute then objecting to what is ultimately an ANC nomination list?
We take the view that Jacob Zuma, for the reasons that you've sketched in your intro, and for the reasons that he is now under investigation by the Hawks, who are looking at the Public Protector's report and seeking out evidence in that report and the 12,000 documents that underlie the report and the gaps that one sees in the report, especially around whether President Zuma has lied to Parliament about the Zuma family paying for the residences at Nkandla. We see all of that taken together as evidence that he is now too compromised and too conflicted a person to properly discharge the functions and duties of a president of South Africa. So initially we wrote to the ANC and said, please reconsider. The Secretary General of the ANC has he telephoned me and said he's not prepared to reconsider. So President Zuma remains the presidential candidate of the African National Congress-led alliance for the elections on the 7th of May. But of course, on the 7th of May, there's not an election of a president. There's an election that takes political parties into the National Assembly And at the first meeting of the National Assembly after the elections, the 400 members of Parliament there vote on who will be our next president, and whoever gets 201 votes becomes the next president. And it's really there that the crunch will come, because it's likely that opposition parties will also object that President Zuma is too conflicted and too compromised, given the content of the Nkandla report, given the review of the 783 charges and the new criminal proceedings pending against him. Given his track record as president, really, he's not in a position to fulfill the duties and functions of President of South Africa properly. It's a very important position. It is the key position in the South African constitutional setup. We've chosen to have our head of state and the head of the national executive in one person. Previously, we had a president and a prime minister. That has all been folded into one post, a key post in our constitutional order, one that should be occupied by a person who is open, accountable, and responsive to the needs of ordinary people. We contend that it would be irrational for the ANC to persist in nominating Jacob Zuma as its candidate for presidency, should it enjoy a majority after the 7th of May elections are held.
I want to ask you about the Institute of Accountability in South Africa, but before I go there, just tell us how you then hope to escalate this objection going forward the next couple of weeks and months ahead of the election.
Yes. Look, it started with a simple letter to the Secretary General of the ANC. It escalated into an objection to the candidacy before the Independent Electoral Commission. We'll get a ruling on that on the 7th of April. And we've said in the objection that there is no technical reason why President Zuma cannot be an ordinary member of Parliament. And we fully anticipate that the IEC will say, well, allow that process to happen, because he does qualify to be an ordinary member of Parliament, because he is not insolvent, he's not insane, and he's not incarcerated for, or hasn't been for more than a year, in terms of a criminal sanction in our courts. So on that basis, he is technically eligible to become a member of Parliament. But we suggest that there is a higher standard in respect of the requirements of a president because of the key position that he holds. So this objection will escalate when we hope opposition parties will also object. The other way that we've escalated the objection is to create an online petition on the world-famous Avars website, where anybody who is unhappy with the candidacy of President Zuma can sign up on the petition on Avars and can ask the leadership of the ANC to recall him as their candidate. That's all that civil society can do at this stage.
Tell us a little bit about the Institute of Accountability, or for Accountability in South Africa, the work you do, the standing that you have, and maybe why South Africans should listen to you.
Yes, well, we're really based on two of the three foundational values of the new South African constitutional order that are in Section 1 of the Constitution. So the Institute for Accountability seeks to exact accountability and to promote responsiveness to the needs of ordinary people. And the third one is, of course, openness, which we take as a given. Now, exacting accountability is hardly the most popular activity in South Africa at the moment. We seem to have a great shortage of accountability, and in the case of President Zuma, a consistent effort on his part to avoid accountability in any way that he can. His non-response to the Public Protector's 14-day deadline on the Nkandla report is a prime example of delay, distract, and dodge That's what he's done. He's put it off until after the elections, which is perhaps good politics, but not good accountability. He is distracted because he's saying that he wants the SIU to look into maladministration and escalation of costs, but he's getting everybody's eye off the really problematic areas, which is, has he breached the executive ethics code by not looking after public resources as he should, and did he mislead Parliament deliberately when he said that the Zuma family paid for the residences at Nkandla? Those he's sort of avoided, and all of that amounts to dodging the real issues that the public protector has raised. So the Institute for Accountability has been working on that type of issue since its formation in 2009. We've been instrumental in the calling of the Commission of Inquiry into the arms deals, which is another area where President Zuma features, and not with flying colours. We've been instrumental in the fight for effective and independent anti-corruption machinery in South Africa, and that is now in the form of litigation around the constitutionality of the legislation which has tweaked the Hawks. That case is back in court on the 15th of next month. We also broke the bread cartel. The big bread manufacturing companies created a cartel which in effect stole a couple of slices of bread off the tables of the poor. That cartel has been broken, and in the process of dealing with the fallout of that cartel, we have managed to create, through litigation in the courts, a general class action in South African law. So before, there was only a class action in respect of human rights violations. Now we can have a class action in respect of any litigation that lends itself to being mounted by a class of people that have been prejudiced or adversely affected by any activity of big business or government, for that matter.
Advocate Hoffman, thank you for joining us.
Besides all this lawfare, we also get involved in educating the public, which is what I hope you and I are doing at the moment.
Absolutely. We've run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's Advocate Paul Hoffman joining us from Cape Town. He's the director of the Institute for Accountability. Now, just to recap that story, the country may have to wait until June for President Jacob Zuma to his full response to the public protector's report on security upgrades to his Nkandla home. President Zuma met a 14-day deadline to respond to Parliament yesterday, but said he would only respond in full after receiving a report from the Special Investigating Unit. Opposition parties were quick to accuse him of delaying tactics ahead of the election on the 7th of next month.
Adhering to the 14-day deadline, the President's much-anticipated response to the Nkandla report. Thuli Madonsela found he unduly benefited from non-security upgrades and that he should repay some of that money. But neither a debate nor a parliamentary ad hoc committee is on the cards anytime soon.
Noting that 3 state agencies or institutions, namely the Public Protector, the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster of Cabinet, and the Special Investigating Unit, have all inquired into the same subject matter, the President has decided that he will give a full and proper consideration to all the matters before him, and upon receipt of the SIU report.
Opposition parties accuse the President of delaying tactics.
We believe it's a slap in the face of accountability. People have been waiting 2 weeks for this response. We've been very patient, but it makes it ever clearer to us in the DA that we have to move forward with this impeachment.
He's sending a very negative message not only to Parliament, but to the Public Protector, to the public, and he is undermining the Constitution in doing so. He needs to answer as soon as possible.
But the country will have to wait.
Originally, we had hoped to have our report ready by initially mid-April, then it became mid-May, and then it became the end of May. But that's more or less where we're heading towards, end of May, first, second week of June.
The presidency says it's not a case of buying time. It says President Zuma had previously, on receiving reports from the public protector, submitted a preliminary report to Parliament, followed by a final report.
So it has been a practice. This is a serious matter. There are, as we say, 3 investigations, and account must be taken of all when taking action, so that one does not act in fits and starts, so that when one takes action, one proceeds along that line consistently.
Meanwhile, some believe the president's response is legally inadequate.
The president must respond to Parliament within that 14 days on the issue of the breach of the Executive Members' Ethics Act. The president has failed to discharge that duty today, and is therefore in further breach of the Executive Members' Ethics Act.
The public protector was not available for comment. Nkandla, SABC News, Parliament.
Let's take a quick look at what you're talking about on social media, of course. Nkandla very much still within the sphere of social media. Lord Raza says, that's good with me. Here at the guy, Jacob Zuma says he'll reply to the Nkandla issue after you'll re-elect him as the president. That from Lord Raza. Ntabi Wamakwena says, wasn't the SIU investigation complete? Good question. Hashtag Nkandla. Zola says, sum total of Zuma's defense has been, I didn't know. The arms deal, he didn't know. Nkandla, he didn't know. That's from Zuma. Caffeine Fine says, hashtag e-tolls. They did this without telling me, so why should I pay for something I did not ask for? Zuma on Nkandla. And Bambi says, go on YouTube, type Nkandla style, laugh, well, just a little. We had a look at it. Yeah, it's very funny. A very funny little video that was made up. Rude Damager says the SI investigation might take years, and knowing the ANC might not even be concluded. Nkandla delay tactic until the elections. Well, let's take a quick look on our Facebook page. The Labour Court is expected to rule on the legality of a strike by Royal Via bus drivers in Johannesburg. We've got that on our page, and there has been another shooting at the U.S. Army base in Fort Hood, Texas. The gunman killed at least 3 people and himself wounded 16 others. He took his own life. We have all of that details on that story on our Facebook page and all the other stuff that you're interested in. Then, today in history, 1968, on this very day, the 3rd of April, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his final speech. I've been to the mountaintop at the Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. He was assassinated the next day. See you after a break.
Because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live.
Gaming enthusiasts, including us here at Network, indulged in over 80 exhibits that included the Xbox One and Nintendo. Visitors also got to try out PlayStation 4 computer entertainment system, which was unveiled at Rage 2013.
I just came here to see the Xbox One and the PS4, see which one I'd buy.
If you have close to 400,000 Rand to spare, then you can buy the new UHD TV set. Samsung has launched cheaper models, but cheaper doesn't necessarily mean cheap. South Africa has just received the country's first surgical robot, but the robot isn't quite taking over from your surgeon just yet.
That's Network, Sundays, 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
As the biggest, the most extensive, diverse news organization and the best content provider of choice in Africa, we aim to offer the nation breaking news, continuous content updates, and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are extremely devoted to putting the news in context and providing the nation with the news they want in their own language. We reflect the world to the nation and the nation to itself. This is SABC News. All local, all global, all the time. Exclusive to DSTV.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom on SABC News. Nobody has so far claimed responsibility for a blast that killed 6 people and injured several others in the suburb of Eastleigh in Kenya. Police have arrested 657 suspects since the blast on Monday night. Eastleigh is known as Little Mogadishu because of its large Somali population. The area has seen several recent grenade attacks, including one in December last year that killed 4 people. Eyewitnesses said devices appeared to have been thrown towards a bus stop and a food kiosk as people made their way home for the evening. Armed police patrolled the streets of Kenya's port city, Mombasa, yesterday after a prominent radical Muslim cleric assassinated overnight was buried as a martyr. For the latest and to tell us about the whole security situation in Kenya at the moment, we're joined by our East Africa correspondent, Sarah Kamani from Nairobi. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
Sarah, just give us an update since the blast happened.
Well, a lot has happened since Monday when we had the first attack in Italy. A day after, one of the radical clerics from Mombasa called Makaburi was killed. It is still not known who killed him. The Kenyan government saying that they were not involved in that murder and saying that they have now launched investigations. But there's also been a swoop across the country, and especially areas dominated by members of the Somali community, and more than 1,000 people have been arrested. The Minister for Interior Security, Joseph Olelenku, is saying that they are closing in on crucial leads that could lead to arrest of some of the people involved in a recent terror attack in the country.
Sarah, what about the 657 people that were arrested? That's a big number, isn't it? It seems as if the police arrested all the suspects in the country.
Well, what is happening is that the fact that it is not quite clear who is carrying these attacks because nobody has claimed responsibility. What the Kenyan government is doing is that it is carrying random soups and random searches in places where intelligence officers think there would be people who could be directly involved in these attacks or who could be sponsoring the attackers. So since Monday, when the first attack happened in Italy yesterday, there have been swoops going on, and so far they said they have arrested more than 1,000 people. But of course, the question a lot of people are asking is, then what after these people are arrested? Because we have not seen any person being arraigned in court. We have not had the country's president. We have not somebody involved in this attack.
Sarah, also, it seems as if the insurgency is changing somewhat in Kenya, with softer targets, more public places being targeted and so forth. Is that the case? And what's the response from the locals because of that?
Well, it would be very difficult to say where these people are facing. They are. It is quite clear that some of the areas that are especially little restaurants where locals may be. And a story that was carried out in one of the dailies here yesterday, saying that it looks like the way the attacks are being carried out is in a way that is possibly a way of trying to put fear in locals, but also try and send away investors. Rwanda Kenya sent troops to Somalia, and since then it has been quite... every time there is a terror attack, and most of them are being linked to the Al-Shabaab terror network in Somalia.
Sarah, is there a sense now that Kenya is becoming a dangerous place and a dangerous place for people to travel to?
Well, I don't think it would be fair to say that because it is not like the whole country is under attack, and the attacks are very isolated, and sometimes it takes a long time between one attack and another. But indeed, the Kenyan government admitting that it is concerned about the security of the country and the security of its people. Yesterday, the South African High Commission here in Nairobi sent out text messages to South African citizens living here in Nairobi, asking them to be cautious, to be vigilant, and to monitor the local media to see any eventualities, or to be aware that the country is on high security alert. And indeed, everybody is on high security alert, especially since the Westgate attack. But I don't think it would be fair to say that Kenya is actually, a security area that people should be afraid of coming into, because businesses are still going on. Yesterday, the Minister for Treasury giving figures that show that indeed, despite the terror attacks, investors are still coming into the country.
Sarah, thank you for joining us. Don't go away. We've got a story on Africa Connect. You did a lovely piece on it on our platforms yesterday. Just when we do our digital segment next, I want to ask you a few questions on that. So stay on the line for us. Okay, it looks like she's left anyhow. Time now for us to take a look at what's happening in the online space and what you're talking about on our platforms and also then, of course, on the social media front. Joining me is SABC News online production editor, Christel de Toy. Good morning, Christel. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Interesting week.
It's been very interesting. There's been a number of stories. To divert slightly from the most obvious story, we had a study by the Human Sciences Research Council released on HIV prevalence in the country, which I think is a very important story to start with. Some very scary statistics that came out of there. Our reporter, Sipho Steedman, was tweeting on that. But things like 1 in 10 of the people who believe they are low risk to be infected with HIV already are infected. Wow. A large percentage of men and women don't know still that they are HIV positive. There's some very scary stats that have come out of that, and one can just hope that that kind of story can raise awareness going forward.
Look at the numbers, 400,000 new infections, fewer men who are testing themselves, and young women are having sex with older people, and this causes the spread of the disease. It's worrying statistics, isn't it?
Very much, and there's also, again, upsurgence in multiple sexual partners. Minister Aaron Motsoaledi said he's finding that choice condoms are not popular with the youth anymore, so they'll be launching new flavoured and coloured condoms. So let's see if that makes a difference, as long as we can promote the use of condoms.
Flavoured and coloured condoms, Christel, that's way out there. Let's look at what's on the site. The big story, of course, this week has been the President's response to Parliament yesterday on the upgrades at his Nkandla residence. How has it been trafficking online?
Sure, it's caused a stir, I think, everywhere. It's just the biggest story of the week, I suppose. And people have very strong views. You know, we've reflected some tweets on the site where people will say ANC National Chairperson Baleka Mbete said she hasn't encountered any problems. But then people like Jonathan Levin will say Zuma refuses to accept responsibility for Nkandla. Incredibly, by manipulating the system, he has assured that he never reports to anyone. And then, of course, we've got the SMS that the DA sent out, saying that President Zuma stole money. And we're expecting judgment on that on Friday, but it's really got people talking.
I suppose, like the Oscar trial, a lot of prejudging happens in the social media space.
Absolutely, and everyone is an expert. Everyone is an expert. We've, of course, got Oscar coming back next week, so it's another big story that will be competing with Nkandla, as well as the elections coming up.
I wanted to ask you about this SMS campaign that's causing such a stir between the DA and the ANC, and it would only happen before an election, wouldn't it?
Of course, it will only happen before an election. I think the contentious issue is that the DA used the word stolen, that President Zuma had stolen money from the SA public. It was in court yesterday, where the ANC took the matter to the High Court and said this is unacceptable. The DA should be fined for it. The decision is hopefully going to be issued on Friday, so we'll definitely be monitoring that and still reflecting what people are saying on the topic. Very heated debate online.
Now, before we talk about the elections, let's go to Sarah in Kenya. Sarah, Africa Connected, you're still with us. I hope the event was hosted in Kenya. You did a lovely piece on it. Just give us a little bit of an update on Africa Connect and some of the winners and losers.
For those of people who don't talk about hundreds of shillings.
Unfortunately, Sarah, the line is terrible there. The line is not good enough for broadcast. Just tell us a little bit.
Yeah, what Africa Connect is, it's a project driven by Google, which the SABC is also supporting, looking at innovation online in the African space. And a Kenyan contestant actually won it. South Africa also had a contestant. Unfortunately, we didn't win. But it's very important to build capacity in the online space and innovation in Africa, and then to reward that. So the winner was actually Stawa Wafuka from Kenya, and he has been using Google blogging tools to create an online platform for himself. So there are exciting things happening in the African innovation and science space.
Let's get back to the election, our election coverage and 20 years of democracy. shows that can be found on our YouTube channel. How are we covering that?
We've actually got a special report for Democracy 20 that people can access on our landing page. If they go to the bottom, they can click through. We've got very extensive dedicated election coverage. And then now the SABC's program in the evening on Democracy 20 and the elections can be found on a playlist on YouTube. And our YouTube channel, of course, is youtube.com/SABC News. So there's a lot of dedicated content, and we're just going to be stepping this up more and more as we head towards the election next month.
So it'll be a one-stop shop where people can get everything on the election and more right on our platform, right?
Absolutely, and you can go to Twitter, you can go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube, and then the main site will also link you to all the things you need to go to, which is sabc.co.za/news.
Now, the other big thing this week was April Fool's Day. Now, I was really taken to the cleaners by my wife, who put on Facebook that she was pregnant with our third child, which really put me in a bit of a spot amongst my friends.
Were pregnant.
Well, everyone is calling me and sending me messages, but there were some other interesting ones, I would think.
Absolutely. I think one of we can see here the SARU announced that the Springbok rugby kit is changing completely, obviously coincidentally a lot like the sponsor's colours, and people were infuriated, saying they're selling out the South African public. They cannot do this. There were also, the media had a couple. It was reported that Julius Malema is going to be a candidate for the DA. Now we can understand in the political context why this could almost be believable. There are, of course, stories about Helen Ziller, who's going to apparently build an Nkandla style residence, and she projected for overrun in that.
Okay.
And then, of course, SABC News, independent newspapers, New Age, ANN7, according to Daily Maverick, are all going to become one company.
Wow.
So we might have jobs, we might not. We'll have to see.
I'm sure everyone were quite up in arms, but like it's still on our pages, and people can go have a look at it, look back at it if they want to. Christelle, thank you for joining us as always. Comprehensive coverage on our digital platforms. Thank you for joining us once again. That's our production editor, Christelle de Toy. Let's take a quick look at our comments. What you're talking about on social media, of course. Everyone this week is talking about Nkandla, but what else are you talking about? AMCU, can't you continue the wage talks with workers back at work? Families are starving, kids can't go to school, but the AMCU president still earns. Well, that is a fact of the matter. People are really struggling on the Platinum Belt, even up in Rustenburg. Even businesses are suffering because people simply can't afford to buy food at the moment. AMCU or employer, this is what happens when the parties negotiate in bad faith. Hammer says AMCU encourage miners to strike and they're not getting paid, while AMCU bosses get fat salaries every month. Pasco Risk says South Africa's Platinum Belt economy crippled by a 10-week strike and spillover effect. Mine strike, Anglo Impala, they're all in there. And Motibelli says, my co-workers call and ask me why can't we defy the strike and go back to work. They say AMCU is taking a wrong path with their lives. And yes, thousands and thousands of people are suffering because they are not earning, most of them, since about the middle of January. Can you imagine that, being so long without a salary? Anyhow, give us your ideas and your thoughts and your tweets and your pictures on our Facebook page, of course, and at SABC Newsroom on our Twitter page. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we talk about womentality. If you don't know what that is, this is Newsroom on SABC News.
I'm Dr. Cyril Mutau. Watch Health Talk every Saturday on SABC News as we unpack gripping health issues on the African continent and beyond. That's every Saturday at 9 a.m. on DSTV Channel 404. Health Talk, making you aware.
Why watch the news on SABC? We bring you news in your own language. News that affect you. Sports. We have
Catherine Drew, SABC News at the High Court in London.
Sherwin Bryce-News, SABC News.
Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Nairobi.
We touch and change people's lives. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom. Or you are with Newsroom. The Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry says it's shocked by a sudden 5.9% hike in container cargo duties at ports, which came into effect on the 1st of April. The biggest increase, it says, in years. Janine Myberg from the Chamber says it's unacceptable that the port regulator of South Africa only announced a hike on Monday. She joins us from our Cape Town studio. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning.
Just give us your the Chamber's official reaction to this increase.
Well, you alluded to it earlier. It is shock and dismay. Business received 1 day's notice for an increase of 5.9% on cargo dues.
Just explain to us the effect of this on the industry and the economy at large.
Well, basically, the ports have a monopoly, so exporters and importers have nowhere else to go. And it's detrimental to the economy in that our exporters have to compete with their competitors where they are already behind with an increase, or they pay 4.6% or 4.6 times more than what their competitors pay. So that is detrimental to the economy. How does a business remain competitive and relevant in consideration with its competitors abroad?
But surely 5.9% hike, that's in line with inflation and should be expected almost annually.
It's a hike, and the port regulator has said that we are way out of proportion with our competitors abroad. If you look at a container, a singular container to handle the containers, we are 874% higher than the normal tariffs. So we are known to be the most expensive ports in the world.
Is that accurate?
Which is not acceptable.
Is that how we compare to the rest of the world as the most expensive? Is that true?
That is very true. We are the most expensive ports, and that has been conveyed by the regulator who has done the various assessments.
Where does this money go to, and who manages that process?
The port regulator, sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. I understand who manages the process. Yep. The port regulator manages the process once they have been approached by the port authorities for an increase.
And where does the money go to?
Well, that's a very good question. It goes to Transnet, and it's a well-known fact that the ports are a cash cow for Transnet, as we assume that it is used to compensate for other endeavours that aren't as successful as the ports.
What has the response been from wider business and other stakeholders there around Cape Town and your constituency?
Much as I've articulated earlier, shock, dismay, surprise, especially in the light of the fact that the regulator has continuously stated that we are way out of the ballpark with our competitors, that the costs are, as the percentages I've raised or mentioned, are way too high. Last year, the regulator declined to increase the tariffs, but this year it was increased. And it's once again a challenge for our members and people out there to remain competitive, or to remain globally competitive. It's a challenge especially in the Western Cape. We have our exports are with fruit, wines, and these go in containers. And our members have got no choice but to make use of the ports, because it's actually run like a monopoly. There aren't other ports that they can use. People abroad are looking at ports such as Mozambique and Namibia, and then once again a revenue that could have come to South Africa is going abroad.
Tell us about how you plan to go against this, and what steps are you taking with your members in order to fight this?
Well, we've obviously objected to this, and we will once again object. We objected previously when the Ports Authority wanted an increase of almost, I think, 15% or 18%, and we sent through the information of the comparative tariffs worldwide, and we will once again object, and we have interactions to the credit of the Ports Authority, which has been arranged for the 15th and the 14th and 15th of this month.
Janine Marburg, thank you very much for joining us from the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who say they're shocked by a sudden 5.9% hike in container cargo duties at ports in this country. Now, finally, women have always been the strong ones of the world. So says famous French designer Coco Chanel. That's why we rather hand the next story over to our producer, Katrine Milan, who's much more qualified than me.
Well, thank you, Eben. And yes, last month we celebrated International Women's Day, a day that honors women around the world, those who have inspired, paved the way, and given hope to so many. Now, today in studio, we are joined by two gorgeous women, Anya van Zyl and a familiar face on the show, Melinda Bum, the directors of Womentality. Now, Womentality aims to motivate a new generation of young ladies to equip them with the make of a meaningful difference in society. Melinda and Anya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Katrine.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Firstly, let's start off. Just tell us about the thinking behind Womentality.
Well, Womentality is a very young company that Anya and myself started in May last year. And if you take the word apart, it says woman mentality. And it's really a workshop that's being composed to cultivate a female mindset or a positive mindset for young women. I think in today's society, we have so many different societal demands and people don't know where to keep up with and how to come to pace with everything. And I think it's necessary for us as women who have a platform in life to really equip younger girls with the skills and with the know-how and with info that they would otherwise not have had.
Now, you just defined Womentality, so as you say, it's two words broken up, and it's women and mentality, fearlessly feminine. I also read on your website. Yeah. Can you guys tell me what defines women today?
Well, we actually spoke about it in the car, and I've had this idea that there's so many things these days that we think defines women, but it's not necessarily color or skin or shapes and sizes. And there's definitely a universal golden thread that femininity defines women and womanhood. And I think Melinda agrees on that with me.
I think the focus is not in what defines you in life. It's knowing that you don't need something to define you as a woman to have significance in society. And I think that's what we communicate, is you don't have to grab hold of things to look for your identity, but that you just have to embrace with what you have, and that's going to give you the inner strength to accomplish whatever you want.
Now, obviously, we live in the 21st century, and the role of the woman has changed significantly. How would you guys say Womentality encourages that new role that women fulfill today?
Well, there's so many demands on young women these days, and I mean, we can be mothers, we can be wives, we can be corporate women as well, and Womentality wants to embrace young women so that they know they don't have to lose their femininity or their womanhood to try and fit into this a man's world. And Womentality tries to embrace femininity, that you don't have fear to be feminine, and that it's actually such an empowering thing to be feminine, because that is in our blueprint, and it's a gift that's been given to us. And to be feminine is our biggest advantage.
I think that's something I saw last year when I went to corporates. I saw so many women trying to neglect their femininity and the fact that they are women because they think it'll make them stronger. We don't want men to open doors for us. We don't want men to treat us with respect. We want to harden ourselves because we think that makes us strong. And in the contrary, embracing your femininity, being a woman, that gives you the strength in life to do whatever you want. I heard this quote the other day, and it was so funny because it's so ironic. They say it's the most difficult thing on earth to be a woman because you have to think like a man, look like act like a lady, look like a model, and work like a horse. And I think, I mean, it is so true. We think there are so many things in life and roles that we need to fulfill.
but we neglect the very part that enable us to do it and to prosper within those roles.
So we shouldn't fear being feminine.
No.
That's what you guys are coming down to. Tell me, you guys also go to schools and chat to girls, and tell me more about these projects that you guys do.
Well, we've had the most amazing response. We started the workshop last year in May, and we hosted this big event for 450 girls, and then we took it to the Free State. And now we're on a nationwide roadshow where we talk at various schools and bring a little bit of the message regarding womentality to some of the girls that might not be able to go to the workshops. And it is so important for them to understand that your womanhood isn't confined to the color of your skin, the makeup you wear, the clothes you wear, but the way you look at yourself in your purest form and whether you actually like what you see.
Now, there are a couple of workshops coming up now this month. Can you guys just give us the details on these workshops? When, where, how can we be part of it?
It's an amazing year for us that's lying ahead. We're going to so many different provinces. We've got Durban and Cape Town lined up. And we've got fabulous sponsors that's on board. And our next workshop is on the 26th of April at the Maslow Hotel in Jansen. And then just the following week, it's going to be the 1st of May at the Atterbury Theatre. And I think our sponsorships, they cover like every single aspect of being a woman, and we kind of embrace that. So we've got Nimu for skincare, Smashbox with makeup, Gary Rom hair care, USN for health.
For Sheenies, we've got a sexologist on the day, different motivational speakers. We've got LC talking about social media etiquette, and I think all the frivolous things are compiled in the day as well, because I think that adds some value. But the underlying note of the day is really that you have to embrace everything about your femininity in a holistic manner. So women can go, and young girls can go, take their friends, their mothers, their teachers, anyone that has influence in their life, and book their tickets at www.womentality.co.za, and they're going to be spoiled rotten. There's a goodie bag of
food, entertainment, and
it's going to be a wonderful
guest
day.
Speakers. Our current Miss South Africa, Rodine Strauss, she phoned us last night to say, please, she attended both of our workshops, the one in Pretoria and the one in Bloemfontein, and she says, oh, I've got a testimony, I want to share it with all the women, because she learned so much from all the specialist guest speakers on the day. And she said she walked away more encouraged and more inspired, and so she's going to be there.
You guys also you were talking about a sexologist this time around. Can you guys touch on that topic for me, women and sexuality today in the 21st century?
I think society has kind of corrupted our perception of what it is to be sensual. They've placed more emphasis on sexuality than they have on sensuality. And I think that is really what we need to communicate, is that being sexy in life doesn't mean that you have to be naked, or that you have to bombard society with pictures and selfies and all sorts of different things. That you have to understand your body, that you have to understand which phases you're going through, and that you can't take advice from different magazines necessarily, or forums or tweets or whatever, that are catered for an audience that are much more mature. I think if you look at South African women and you compare it to girls from the States, girls from the States are much more in tune with their sexuality rather than their sensuality. And I think that corrupts a female mindset.
And there's so much hope in South Africa for the young women, and that's why we brought Elna Rudolph and from My Sexual Health on board as well, because she's got a passion for the young women to inform them so that they have knowledge and can make proper decisions, so that they don't get the wrong information from social media platforms.
You guys, we can chat about this whole day, but time has run out. Can you just quickly clarify, just recap, what time is the workshop? When is the workshop?
The workshop starts at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's the 26th of April at the Maslow Hotel, and the following week, the 1st of May at the Atterbury Theatre in Pretoria, and they can get tickets at www.womentality.co.za.
Okay, great. Thank you, you guys. Thank you for joining us. That was Anya van Zyl and Melinda Bum from the directors of Womentality. Now, more on that is available on our Facebook page. You can go click there, and also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, back to you.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm not really a doctor, guys, but if you need help, I can. Okay, let's just take a quick final look at what you are thinking about on social media today. Tiffany says, my prayers tonight are with the Fort Hood victims, of course. 3 confirmed dead and more expected, 16 injured in another shooting there in America. Thoughts and prayers to the families of the soldiers killed at Fort Hood. Things like this needs to be stopped. Pari says, our soldiers are too young to carry weapons, but old enough to die. Hashtag Fort Wood. Some of these are international comments. It's high time mental illness and not guns becomes the topic after these incidents. That's right. NYC EMS website says the shooting at Fort Wood is the 15th shooting on a U.S. military base since President Barack Obama took office. Thoughts and prayers to the victims. And Piers Morgan, our very own famous man, says America's lethal cocktail, absurdly easy access to guns and poorly treated mental health concerns. Well, Piers, it is a global problem, unfortunately. That's where we have to wrap it. This show is broadcast live every day between 9 and 10 live, rebroadcast at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then 5 a.m. the next morning you can watch the whole show again. Also, we stream live on YouTube between 9 and 10 every morning, and then, well, you can watch it at your leisure throughout the rest of the day. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.